banked it in, and the game is tied. We're going to overtime.
You wanted an overtime? I think you're going to get one.
And we are headed to overtime.
And we are through 4 in 60 minutes. Not enough.
Oh, my God, we're going to overtime.
Let's fire it up. This is Overtime here on the official Colts podcast channel and also on YouTube with JJ Stankevitz, Casey Vallier. I'm Matt Taylor. We bring you Overtime when things happen, when stuff happens, not on a Tuesday when we do the official Colts podcast, not on a Friday here in the offseason when we do the Last Word, our weekly offseason radio show. But this is Thursday, and we got some juicy stuff to talk about. So we are here with you, as always, to talk about Anthony Richardson and, of course, Chris Ballard, general manager of the Colts, having their end-of-the-season press conferences. So a lot to get into. Fellas, first off, how are we? Case,
we're doing good. Well? How about you guys? I mean, it's one of those things, the offseason hits, yet I still see you guys every day. So,
yeah, right. What offseason?
What offseason?
I mean, seriously.
Right? I still have to walk into the same office and see these guys like, oh, great. I thought there'd be, all these beautiful, sunshine and beaches, and now here we are.
Did you catch something
12 degrees outside here in Indy.
Chris Ballard mentioned today.
A lot of spite over there. He's like, that's all right.
Something Chris mentioned today is he's like, Shane hasn't really taken time off in the last year and a half.
Yeah, probably longer.
Because guy went from being in the Super Bowl to getting on a plane to Indy to get hired as head coach. He maybe took a week or two off in the summer, but even then, I'm sure his mind is still racing of how does training camp look? How does all these things look? So for Shane Steichen, congratulations. You've earned yourself a little bit of time off here. Yeah. But for us, we'll get there someday.
Yeah, we got the playoffs going on right now. Yeah. Obviously, the Colts unfortunately missing
insane
out on that.
coaching changes all over the league.
Yeah,
you're not kidding.
Bill Belichick and the Patriots mutually parting ways. We got a change in Tennessee within the division with Mike Vrabel. So a lot of juice going on, and we're just 3 or 4 days into the offseason.
We got to get Rick Venturi on the pod next week to talk about Nick Saban and Bill Belichick both stepping down, being
both
out.
riding around on golf carts.
I texted Rick last night being like, wow, I can't believe Saban's out. And he floated the idea of Nick Saban being the college football czar, kind of the commissioner.
Clean up the whole act.
Oh, that'd be great. I love it.
This whole NIL nonsense.
I mean,
if there's one guy that could do it, that would be able to. That would be Nick
Saban. He knows the ins and outs of the game.
Into perspective.
Anyways, that's not why people are tuning in here. But I did want to drop that one in because that one made me perk up a little bit. Oh, love that idea.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right, well, let's start with Anthony Richardson. I mean, first of all, we should disclose that these full press conferences, Anthony Richardson and I was going to say Shane Steichen. Obviously, it's Chris Ballard. Both of those press conferences in full. You can check those out on demand on your own time. I think Chris talked for 55 minutes, and then Richardson spoke for almost 25 minutes. So check those out on Colts.com and the Colts mobile app. But JJ, obviously, one of the big things that came up from Anthony is, playing in only 4 games, playing in only he had 173 snaps for the season. Really made it through healthy just one game this year. That was the Rams game when he played a full 4 quarters. It's playing style, right?
Yeah.
And how do you have to change your approach? Do you have to change your instincts on how you play? Before we get into our reaction, let's throw to a soundbite. This is Anthony Richardson earlier today on whether or not he has to change his playing style in 2024 going into year number 2.
It's just a matter of me just being out there and just learning when to get down, when not to get down. Some of the injuries were unfortunate, like my ankle getting stepped up on, hitting my knee on the turf really hard, just stuff like that, stuff that I can't control. But the ones that I can't control, I got to prevent those, like me slowing up near the end zone, getting the concussion, that was completely on me. And then, getting tackled, I couldn't really prevent that. I was trying to brace myself for it, and just, unfortunately, my shoulder just, did what it did. But I don't think I have to change the way I play, just being a little smarter when the time does come.
Did that say it'll change the way you play? Will any part of you maybe be any more hesitant in certain situations, or you think you'll still have the same? You'll still be the same Anthony you've always been?
No, I feel like I'm gonna stay the same. Keep being me, keep playing the way I'm playing. But like I said, just being a little smarter when the time is needed. I can't try to run through everybody. If it's 1st and 10. Get what I can get and get down. Get out of bounds, get to the sideline, do what I can do. But if the game is on the line, I got to go out there and compete. But it's just a matter of being smart for myself and the team, and I'm gonna try to do that for sure.
There you go. You heard it right there. I mean, Anthony Richardson knows how important he is to the success of this team and the overall dynamic ability of this offense. I love what he said, that it's not going to change the way that I play the game. My instincts are still going to be there, but I have to be better in terms of situational awareness, right? If it's 1st and 10 and we call an RPO and I end up with the football in my hands and I get 6 yards, it's okay to slide. It's okay to give myself up. But if the game's on the line, the Colts drafted Anthony Richardson for a reason, and that's to be a playmaker, to be dynamic. And if he needs to run through a linebacker on 3rd and short or get in the end zone in the 4th quarter, he's going to continue to do that. So I love that answer, because he's aware of what this season was for him. It was a learning experience, but going forward, he knows that he's got to stay healthy, available, and time and place to kind of put it on the line.
Yeah, and once you start talking about should he change the style of his game, you talk about changing what makes him great and the player. And that's something he talked about later in his press conference too, is the Colts brought me here. I got here because of who I am as a player, because I'm a bigger guy as a quarterback who can run and make explosive plays through the air and with his legs. And if you start saying, all right, we need to change this, we need to change that about your game, you can't run as much, you need to get down as much as you can, then you do change who he is, and that might not be a net positive for his game. I think the maturity with which he handled that question and the answer, it's clear he's done a lot of introspection. He's very self-actualized about it. I'm going to get into that here in a little bit. But the other part of it, too, is like situationally, yeah, okay, 5-yard gain on 1st down, that's great. Let's keep it moving, and you don't need to do anything else beyond that, kind of like you were saying.
I know everybody's all about comparing when you look at the game that Anthony Richardson is. And, a lot of people have drawn that comparison to kind of Jalen Hurts. And if you watch the way that Jalen Hurts plays, I wouldn't think that from the way his rookie year, well, I guess the first time he started playing in Philly to where he is now, I wouldn't say he's changed his game, but he has definitely kind of gotten that mental, hey, this is kind of the pick your spots in a way. And I think that's what it is. And I think Chris talked about it today. Like, he's got to get out there and learn these situations. He's got to get out there and kind of see this in real time, that this is a different level. Like, I'm not all downplaying where he came from, because, Florida, it's not a non-Power 5 school. He's playing against a lot of guys that are playing on Sundays every single week when he was playing in college, but this is at a much higher level than he's ever anticipated. So it is a different vibe that he's got to get in, he's got to get that mental makeup going.
But that also speaks to him taking responsibility for the concussion he had against Houston, where he slowed up going into the end zone.
And I think he knows where those areas are.
Right. Like, that's
able to identify that.
That's a clear learning thing, where in college he could have eased up and made it into the end zone and no one's getting to him. In the NFL, he's getting rocked on that play.
And I think a part of it too, I think what we're all kind of bouncing around is that I wouldn't say that the way he played was reckless.
Yes, 100%.
So it's hard
I would not
for
say
me
that.
to say he needs to change his playing style, because it's not like it was. Ultimately, all of those injuries that happen, they can happen to anybody.
The play that he got hurt on
wasn't anything crazy. It was just a tackle that just happened to land on his shoulder.
But maybe that's one where if he slides and says, "I'll just take no gain on the play, whatever."
It happened in your own territory,
right? That might be a situation where maybe that's something an area of growth for him. But once you start talking about don't run it as much, slide down and just get down, whatever those things are, no matter the situation. That's when you start talking about taking away what makes him such an exciting football player.
Then you just should have drafted Joe Blow.
Exactly, right. Draft a pocket passer, if that's the guy you're looking for.
And real quick, I think also you don't want to get somebody thinking too much about that.
Yes,
as well.
And that's a great point.
Ultimately, you're like, oh, do I need to slide? And then you're forgetting about what you're doing. And I think that's part of it too, is you drafted this guy, as we've talked about, you drafted this guy for a reason. You don't want him out there thinking about multiple things instead of just, hey, go be a quarterback. Go be you, and that's it too.
This is something too. It's not going to happen a lot during a game. There aren't going to be, out of 70 offensive snaps, you might have 1 or 2 during a game where you say, maybe get down here. The rest of them, go be who you are. Be Anthony Richardson, and that is going to be what this team needs.
Right. And I think we've all said this. It just seems like this past season, right? The year that just concluded, it seemed like it was so quick, but yet so long. It seemed like there were like 3 different seasons along the way, because you had the ramp up to the start of the year and the excitement of Anthony Richardson, a rookie quarterback, and what is he going to be? What are we going to do? What are the expectations? What's the ceiling? And then he starts playing, and the first 4 games of the season are really fun. I mean, just on the edge of your seat, with the dynamic ability of Anthony Richardson, and then the last 13 games and the highs and lows and the ups and downs and trying to make the playoffs and the scoreboard watching with Gardner Minshew. So it just was a very interesting, and there were a lot of chapters of this 2023 campaign that just wrapped up. So again, thinking back to when Anthony Richardson went out, that seems like forever ago, but it was really, mid-October, week 5 after the Colts' first meeting against the Tennessee Titans. Want to throw it to another soundbite with all of that in mind. Here's Anthony Richardson on maybe it was a blessing to kind of slow down a little bit, think about the game from a bigger picture, understand the why of playing quarterback, having some time to reflect and watch and get the mental side of the game down, not being on the field.
I've always thought, life wasn't all about me. At the end of the day, it's a matter of who you impact, and the impact that you have on people. And I always try to, take that to heart every day I wake up. But when I did get injured, I did try to look at the bright side immediately, and I kind of gave myself an answer. I told myself, this happened for a reason, and maybe I did need to slow down and actually learn some more things before it was my time to be out there. But after I told myself that, it started getting a little fuzzy for me. It was a little difficult for me to see that picture again. So those first maybe like 5 or 6 weeks were definitely tough for me. But after talking to Coach Shane, talking to DT, and letting them know how I felt, I was hurt, not being able to play football, not being able to go out there with my teammates and dress up and just be out there. I was definitely hurt because, football, like I said, was pretty much all I knew growing up. And with that, being taken away from me, it definitely hurt me. And after talking to them, they let me know it's all a part of the journey. This is just something else I can write in my book and talk about when I get a little older. But just seeing the bigger picture, just trying to find ways to help other people while I'm down. That was the main thing that kind of helped me. Understanding my role in the building when I did get hurt. Be a leader and just be there for the team and just bring the energy. So just trying to find ways to just help. That's what kind of helped me realize what was going on.
Really good soundbite again right there from Anthony Richardson, trying to understand how to be a leader, trying to find value within this team, Casey. And I think he said it very, very well right there, to be able to kind of look at a defense instead of just saying, here's where I'm supposed to go with the football because that's where they tell me to go, understanding why I'm supposed to go there. Yep. And I think just having time to kind of hit the pause button and really reflect and again, master the mental side of the game and slow down after all the chaos of being drafted 4th overall and then the expectations that come with being the face of a franchise, both on the field, from the marketing side of things. I think it was good for him to kind of just slow down and just focus on himself and focus on football, too, in terms of the mental mastery of the game.
Yeah, I mean, we all forget that, well, maybe we don't forget it, but you do almost in some ways forget the fact that he is 21 years old. And you talk about being the face of a franchise, being thrown in a new situation. I mean, this guy's essentially been in Gainesville his whole life. I mean, that's where he was born and raised. So he comes to, I mean, all of it is new. And then you throw in the fact that, here, you're doing this, you're doing that. So I agree. The pause button is a great term for it. And ultimately, everybody he had in his court, whether it's Gardner Minshew, watching him, see how he steadied the ship, watching those peaks and valleys. Because, yeah, he wasn't going through it. But if you watch Anthony, I mean, he's dialed in. That was one of the things you heard from the entire locker room throughout is that, yeah, he's here. He's in every meeting. He's still got his iPad. He's asking questions. So he was doing everything that he possibly could, and I think that is so key because one of the things we talked about before the season is how important is it for him to take as many reps as possible. Well, clearly he didn't take those physical reps, but those mental reps definitely do pay dividends. And I think part of it might be a benefit moving forward that he has seen it from a different aspect, and now throwing him back out there, it might be a different vibe.
Yeah. You know what I liked about that answer, though, is that he admitted that was kind of his reflexive mindset. Okay, let's make this a good thing. Let's figure out how to make this a good thing. And then it was hard. It was hard on him. He said those next 5 weeks.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Where He goes out to LA to get surgery. He comes back. The team goes to Germany. Then it's the bye week. And, he was probably feeling a little disconnected.
Oh, yeah.
And that stretch had to be really mentally taxing on him. And it's something Michael Pittman Jr. mentioned on Monday, that the other part of it is, while he was out, he's watching C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young, his peers in this year's draft, go out and play every single week. He's watching C.J. Stroud set the league on fire through the way that he's throwing the ball. And that had to be hard on him. But once he kind of got he worked through those emotions, and he talked to Shane Steichen, he talked to David Thornton a lot. Then you started to see something Sam Ehlinger told me in the locker room on Mondays. You started to see his personality come back. And something I noticed, and I sort of noticed this actually. I'm not going to take total credit for this, but I noticed it when I was going through pictures of him for some stories. But then Connor Handel, one of our creative video producers here on our production team, pointed this out to me. Did you notice that before every game, during the anthem, Anthony Richardson was right next to Shane Steichen? There is something to me symbolic about that. Mm-hmm. That even if he's not going out there and playing, that he wanted to feel what it was like in those moments. Feel like, hey, it's me and Coach right here. Feel the atmosphere, the energy, the pregame nerves, whatever it may be. And that Chris Ballard said he talked to Anthony before the game against the Texans, saying like, hey, feel this. Remember how this feels. Remember what it's like. Soak it all in. Yeah. Remember the atmosphere. Remember how the team that makes the fewest mistakes wins this game. The margin for error. Mm-hmm. And all those things, I think, kind of compile themselves into this general thought I have about Anthony. And it goes back to something you said, Casey, about how he's 21. And we're always like, wow, he's so mature for his age. He's got this mindset. But to me, it's the self-actualization that he has about himself as a person, as a player, as a teammate, as a brother, as a son, whatever it may be. And it's always the whole like, oh, back when I was 21, I wasn't that mature and all that. Back when I was 21, I was not self-actualized about myself at all.
I don't even know what that meant.
Yeah. Right, I don't even know what that meant. What was I doing? Like, what are you doing at 21?
I might not know what it means now, to be honest.
You're not really thinking about the impact you have on other people.
I was thinking about where to get gas.
Exactly, or something else. in my body. As a 21-year-old. And Anthony, just when he talks about the impact he has on other people.
Sure.
And you think about then him signing autographs before every game, taking pictures, like he gets it. He gets that part of it, but he also does it with this humbleness that something Chris Ballard said is he wants to be one of the guys. He wants to be one of 53 on the team. And just like that whole mentality for him served him so well. I think it served him really well in this season where he admitted, this was hard. This wasn't like flipping a switch to just let's be positive, everything's rosy. Yeah. All right, I'm out for the year, but I'll learn behind the scenes. It was like that sucked. And I had to work through how to actually make it into a positive. Yeah. Just what a remarkable person Anthony Richardson is. And that doesn't even have anything to do with the talent he has at quarterback, which is immense.
There you go. And just before we move on to Chris Ballard, just some housekeeping items. We do know, we heard from Anthony a couple of weeks ago during the Christmas season, when a couple of Colts players showed up at the hospital to sing to the children in the children's hospital. We found out then that he was at that point halfway through his rehab, so that's a couple of weeks ago removed. So he's on the back nine in terms of that. When do we expect him to maybe throw again? And obviously it'll be behind the scenes, but
right. He said he doesn't have a firm timeline, but it sounded like next month. And through this whole thing, no one's ever put a timeline on when he's going to be back. But if you listen to what everyone said, there's been encouragement that it could be for OTAs. If not for OTAs, for training camp, that he would be back throwing. It wasn't even a given he was going to have the surgery. That's another thing he talked about, that this was a difficult decision to work through to get the surgery, but once he realized this is what is best for my career, for the Colts long term, then it was, it's what he told Larry Overton yesterday. It's an easy decision.
All right, question for both of you, then we'll move on. With Richardson not playing a majority of the season, right? Only appearing in 4 games and getting completely through 1. Casey, in what ways do you think next season will still kind of be a rookie season for Anthony Richardson? Maybe not like mistake. Like, I'm not asking you like, man, he's going to struggle with this, and we're still waiting to see how he progresses in terms of this part of his game. I just mean like, in what mental parts of playing quarterback do you still think he's got a ways to go? Just because the only way you truly grow and learn and stack is by just having experiences on the field.
I don't want this to come off as a negative at all, but I think ultimately just finishing games, like start a game and finish it all the way through, I think that is going to be a big step, because you talk about it. I mean, you finished one game, played in 4. Now, football's a long season. I mean, there's 17 games, so when you think about it, that's a lot that he missed. So I think ultimately that's where I am with everything. Like, we talked about it, how it seemed like forever ago. I almost forgot. I mean, I didn't forget, but you almost forget what it was having him as the quarterback. And that's I remember how fun it was. I do remember that. I mean, he was electric, and I'm anxious to get that feeling back, especially in Lucas Oil. There's nothing better than having one of those types of players. And like, Rick Venturi talks about the Ambien players. He's probably more than an Ambien, because I mean, he can do so much. So
you can throw an aspirin tablet too.
You could all of it. Throw it all in there.
the whole medicine cabinet.
The whole CVS department, everything in there. But ultimately, I think that's what it is. It's just in his mind, getting through a full game, going into the next week, preparing, getting through another full game. I think once you break it down into like quarters. So get like a quarter in. You got 4 complete games in, and then you kind of look back and okay, what did that 4 look like?
So how to take care of your body.
Yeah, how do you go through all of that? I mean, you hear a bunch of guys talking about, like, I know Jonathan Taylor, one of his big things, it's not the rehab, it's the prehab, making sure that you're prepared before, so all of that into it. That is where I think you're going to see that rookiness is just getting through games. And I know that's very basic, but that's kind of where I am.
So where I fall on that is, if you look at when he did play, the Colts were an explosive offense. Chris Ballard mentioned it, their 10th in explosive play rate. But he didn't push the ball downfield a whole lot. You saw some throws, the one to Alec where he's got Aaron Donald wrapped up around him, the one to Josh Downs. But if you look at just like average depth of target, him and Gardner were kind of right there when they played. But that's an area of Anthony's game that we have seen on film when he's been at Florida that he wants to do, and he can do it. We didn't see it yet. I think that's an area that had he played the whole rookie season, you would have seen that grow incrementally as the season went on. And that's an area that maybe next year, maybe it won't be an immediate thing, but you'll see hopefully a development curve if he can finish those games. You'll see from week 1 to week 8 to week 15 to week 18 that he's more confident in pushing the ball downfield, that he knows when to take those shots, how to take those shots, because that's an area of this Colts offense that they do need to be more explosive. And a way to help everything with explosiveness is you have to be able to respect the deep ball. That's going to help Jonathan Taylor out. That's going to help him out when he takes the ball off in his hands.
Sure,
I mean, you were there. I know for me there was totally took my breath away the moment inside. I think it was raining at camp, and Anthony threw that pass
the one to Alec,
which, I mean, he was off his left foot, right foot in the air. It didn't even look like he just flicked his wrist and it went 60 yards, and that's when we all were like, this guy's got something.
That was one of those, you kind of stand up straight on that one, like, oh, okay.
I was standing next to Bill Brooks, and he just looked at me and was like, did that really just happen? And I was like, I think Bill's ready to come out of retirement.
Yeah, that's right. I remember looking at Bill after that and being like, Bill, where's your helmet and shoulder pads, buddy?
So I agree. We saw it on tape in Florida. We saw it in camp, but yeah, we're definitely ready to see that in the game for sure.
Good stuff on Anthony Richardson. Again, pull up that entire press conference at your on your time on demand. Again, Colts.com and the Colts mobile app. Elsewhere, Chris Ballard met with the media today, again, for just about an hour. Had a lot to talk about. We'll break down the juicy stuff. But again, the first thing I want to lead off with in terms of the soundbite here, Chris Ballard talked about the defense. Gus Bradley is returning for 2024 under contract. He's going to oversee this defense again next season. But here's Chris talking about his evaluation of the Colts defense this past season and his objectives for that unit going into the offseason.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, I know that's been a hot topic for everybody. And look, it's an area we have to improve. But look, in a little bit of defense, the year before he comes in and, we kind of had I don't want to say a veteran team, but we had some veteran players, and then I just said, look, we're going to go young in some spots, and we went young in the secondary. And look, there's some rough moments at times in the secondary, and I don't completely put that on them. I put that more on me. But how do you ever develop any continuity especially with your own guys, if you don't just play them? So I decided to go young. We took our lumps at times, but I think it's going to pay off down the line for them. I think we had 5 or 6 new starters on defense. We did do some good things now. It's not like it was all bad. The points do got to come down. We'll continue to have long discussions about, where we're going and how we'll get that done. But saying that, we had new starters on defense. We did do some good things too. We got after the passer pretty good. I think it's got to get a little better, but 51 sacks, pretty good. Took the ball away. We wouldn't need to be a little better there in that area. And we've got to take away the explosives. But I would expect to see us take another jump here this year on defense.
Again, that's Chris Ballard on the defense. Pretty simple right there. There's a lot of, I call them Pro Bowl caliber players. There's Pro Bowl players and Pro Bowl caliber players on this defense this past season. Now, some of them are free agents. You got Julian Blackmon. You got Kenny Moore. You lost Shaquille Leonard during the course of the season. He got waived. But the truth of the matter is that, it's the point total, right? You finished 28th in points. You gave up over 24 points per game. And then the big plays. The Colts, I think, they were like 21st in total big plays allowed. So, obviously it's kind of middle of the pack, but, that's where this defense, I think, can improve going forward next season. It starts with the secondary. It was young, and it was kind of young by design there from the admission of Chris Ballard.
Yeah, I think that was a big point that he made, is that we intentionally went young. And he said, we're going to take our lumps. But the Colts feel encouraged by some of those young players now going into 2024, specifically at corner.
Yeah.
The play of Jalen Jones, continued to ascend throughout the season. Juju Brents, he talked about when Juju was on the field, you could see the traits there. You could see the competitiveness. Juju's got to be healthier. That's something he talked about too. He's got to practice more. He's got to play more. But those two guys, and someone he mentioned he threw in there too, is young corners, Dallas Flowers.
Yeah.
Guy who was an ascending player when he got injured in week 4. That opened the door for Jalen Jones, who, I thought had a pretty solid season in there. But it was a young defensive backroom. The only two guys who had played more than 3 years in the NFL, until Ronnie Harrison got moved back to safety, were just Kenny Moore and Julian Blackmon.
That's it, yeah.
And again, that was by design. I think the experience that a lot of those guys had in 23 will benefit them in 24, especially, again, at that cornerback position.
Well, that's a great segue. I was going to ask you. It stinks right now. It stings. Someone just asked me, if you were able to draw up the Achilles heel of this Colts team from this past season, it was probably the secondary, considering how many elite receivers or the opposition's top receivers having big games against the Colts. But how much better off are the Colts going to be because of the baptism by fire from Juju Brents when he was healthy? And by the way, Chris was really adamant about guys, not just Juju, but guys across the board. The only way you're going to get better is by playing. And injuries happen, right? This is the NFL. Everybody gets hurt. The injury rate across the board in this league is 100%. Yeah. But you got to mitigate them as best you can, which means you have to be in tip-top, great condition. You have great nutrition, all that stuff. You have to have great habits to be available. The best ability is availability. But with Jalen Jones when he played and with Juju Brents when he played, Casey, how much better off are the Colts in the long term, given just how many overall snaps these guys played this past season?
That is, for me, was the most I took from the season was the youth got a lot of playing time, especially in the secondary. You could never have it. You could never have enough corners. I will stand on that hill until I die, because you talk about injuries. You lose a step at corner, you're gone. So you can never have enough corners. And when you talk about guys like Jalen Jones, who, he's a 7th-round pick, nothing's guaranteed, and he just kept proving that, hey, I deserve a shot here. Ultimately he beat out the 5th-round pick and Darius Rush. That's why he was on this team. They talked about that when the roster cuts happened, and then you see him just continue to chip away, and then Dallas Flowers goes down, and he steps in. And I would say for the most part, you might have saw more out of Jalen Jones maybe than you saw out of Juju. I thought
because he played.
He played a lot more, and I think you saw that growth. Now, both of them, I'm sure if you look at their tape, there's some ups and there's some downs, and you want to have a lot more ups, but definitely a positive thing. You talked about Dallas Flowers. I mean, you look at just those three guys. We don't know what's going to happen in free agency with Kenny Moore. We know this staff is, the nickel position inside this defense is so key, and Kenny Moore is still elite. I mean, I think he had a great resurgence here in 23, definitely reestablished himself as one of those best corners. So you bring back Kenny, and that group of corners, and Darrell Baker, I mean, look at the amount of snaps that he got too.
Yeah.
That is 4 corners who have played a substantial amount of snaps for this defense, which is going to be key moving forward, because when it comes down to things, sometimes experience, it just matters more, and that's what these guys have earned a lot of this year.
We'll see what kind of shakes out over the next couple of months, but I do think you'll see Chris Ballard add some. He said we're going to add some juice to that group, some fuel to that group.
Yeah.
For some competition, like baseline. You need more competition there.
Right.
And that goes for safety, that goes for corner. Does that include re-signing Kenny Moore II and Julian Blackmon? We'll see.
Yeah. Right.
Like Ballard said, you'd love to bring everyone back, but that's not the reality of it. So, we'll kind of see where those things go over the next couple of weeks and months. Safety is the interesting spot for me in that, do you need more experience back there, whether you sign Julian or not? Chris talked about, Ronnie Thomas had some good moments, Nick Cross had some good moments, but there were some growing pains for both those guys. You needed more consistency
from
there.
The free safety.
So that's a position where you kind of need that guy to be, your backstop, free safety.
Right.
And you can't have Nico Collins running free when there's no safety help on that, on that play to open the game against the Texans. You can't have that. So what does that lead to over the next couple of months in free agency and the draft?
All right, one other highlight from Chris Ballard. I mean, obviously, this time of year when you go into the business side of the NFL, when we're only a couple of months removed from the start of free agency, whenever a general manager speaks, it's all about free agency approach and the Colts having spending money. How are you going to use it? How are you going to spend it? Here's Chris Ballard talking about his free agency approach, specifically how it is kind of tailored to this offseason, because the Colts were 9-8. They had a winning record. And by all accounts from the national media, the Colts are ahead of schedule, right? Maybe surprise some people with their winning record this year despite missing the playoffs. All of that coupled with having a quarterback on a rookie contract and having some money to spend elsewhere, maybe at some other positions. Here's what Chris Ballard had to say in terms of free agency approach.
No, I think we got more flexibility right now than we've had the last few years. A little bit of that is, we're not paying a quarterback big money anymore. And so we're going to have some more flexibility. And we'll do, we'll always be prudent, but we'll be as aggressive as we need to be in free agency with players that we think can help us. And it's always dicey. I think y'all know this. Y'all see this. You're watching the league, okay? And with free agency, it's not just about it's the fit of the player into the locker room, and then whatever you're paying that player that he can earn and is worth the amount of money you're paying him. So it's a fine line.
Certainly an interesting place to be for the Colts. As I said, winning record, rookie quarterback, or I should say quarterback on a rookie contract, 14 unrestricted free agents for the Colts. And they're going to have some holes because they're not going to be able to re-sign everybody. And I think that this is more of a headliner free agency class than we've seen in years past. Mm-hmm. A lot of starters, a lot of leaders. You talked about Kenny Moore and Julian Blackmon and Zach Moss and Gardner Minshew and Grover Stewart and Michael Pittman, Rigoberto Sanchez. So the reality is all of those guys can't come back. I mean, the Colts are going to let some really good football players out on the open market, and you got to deal with that. But, where are the Colts right now, JJ, in terms of Chris Ballard's approach to free agency, knowing this team is close, agreeing with what Shane Steichen had to say at his end of the season press conference, and the Colts being able to win games under Shane Steichen even though Shane Steichen didn't have a full deck of cards this past year.
Right. I think the most important thing for how the Colts are going to operate this offseason is you have, like you said, Mate, the quarterback on a rookie contract. That if you look around the NFL landscape, just that quarterback who you say that's our starter for next year and he's on a rookie contract, that is the most valuable asset a team can have.
Yeah.
Whether or not, and that is almost like irregardless of whether the guy's like good or not, right? It's like if that guy's going to be your starter,
Jones, doesn't matter.
That means you can operate differently than other teams.
Yeah.
Does that mean the Colts are going to get overly aggressive in free agency? I don't know.
Yeah.
Chris Ballard said we're going to get as aggressive as we need to. What does that mean? We'll see. It's not like Chris Ballard's going to come out and be like, guys, we're spending all the cash in the world. Because then you know what's going to happen. His agents are going to come to him and be like, hey, so my guy, you're interested in my guy? Okay, price got jacked up 5% because of that comment you made back in January. Like, he's not going to do that. But this is the first time we have seen Chris Ballard operate in a season where he's a quarterback on a rookie contract. And it's also the first time we've seen him operate in a season where he knows who the quarterback is going to be on January 10th
since
2019, and then Luck retired, and that didn't work. I mean, but that was the last time, right?
Just as you say that, I mean,
Think about
you're right.
Yeah,
you're right, because the last time the Colts had the same starter week 1 in consecutive seasons was 2015, 2016. So you're right.
I mean,
it's amazing.
Think about how that affects your roster building.
Holy moly.
The last couple of years, you've gone into this press conference being like, I don't know who it's going to be.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe we'll go get Phillip Rivers. That sounds good. Okay, sure, we'll go trade for Carson Wentz.
Carson Wentz,
I don't know what we're going to do now after Carson Wentz is gone, but okay, turns out we're going to trade for Matt Ryan.
Yeah.
But you have to then think about
there wasn't the Whopper this year, to your point. Like there wasn't the, all right, like 90% of the questions aren't going to be about one thing.
Honestly, it was kind of a boring press conference, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Like, you kind of want this to be a boring press conference. But, I mean, think about the money you had to spend to get Phillip Rivers in the building, to get Carson Wentz, Matt Ryan in the building, and the draft capital you had to spend to get Carson Wentz and Matt Ryan in the building. You don't have to do any of that right now. You have your full complement of draft picks, and you don't have to go get a quarterback. And by the way, you don't have to pay a left tackle because you feel pretty good about the guy you got on a rookie contract at that position too. That's another spot that gets a little pricey.
Well said right there. And that's the thing, Casey. The Colts have. You always say when you talk about free agency and guys that hit the open market, and Chris talked about it today too. Like the great elite players at premium positions, they don't hit the market.
They don't get there.
All right, so you're already overpaying for B class players. You're paying B class players A type money. Right, so let's think long and hard about how we want to spend our money. And somebody asked him, how much of your salary cap space is going to be spent on in-house free agents. Just based on what we know and our hunches and the amount of great players the Colts have up in terms of expiring contracts, I think it's safe to say that a lot of that money is going to be spent on players that are going to come back that wore this uniform last year.
I think that and just past precedents. I mean, that is one of the things that Chris Ballard has always done. He's rewarded his own. So I would assume that's kind of the route you're going to go. And if you look at it, it's probably warranted. I mean, some of these guys, I mean, you talk about the year that Julian Blackmon had. I think it was probably his best year as a pro when he needed to have a really good year. I talked about the resurgence we saw at Kenny Moore. I mean, we can't stop talking about the year that Michael Pittman had. I mean, the dude was everything for that offense. And then you look at the landscape of the NFL, and ultimately it was a backup quarterback year. I mean, there were so many backup quarterbacks, and when you look at the guy that was playing here, he was probably among the top, if not the top backup that was playing. So if you look at just those four guys, and I didn't even mention Grover Stewart, who he's probably, I mean, it would make sense for him to be back. I mean, Chris Ballard talked about wanting to have him back. Yeah. Right there, those five guys, that probably takes up a good chunk of that cap. But we don't know what's going to happen, but I would agree. I think a majority of it is going to go to those in-house guys.
The other thing to think about here is last offseason, low-key was a bit of a departure. Now the Colts operated in free agency, where they committed some dollars to Samson Ebukam and to Matt Gay. Yeah. And they did that not knowing, but probably believing we're going to have a rookie quarterback in here.
Yeah.
And I think that may be the tip of the iceberg of what could come. It's not like you're going to see...
They were smart.
Right. And
realistic.
Both those moves worked out pretty well.
Yes.
Right. I mean, especially with Ebukam. Goodness, what a year he had. That's not to say that you're going to see Chris Ballard go out and give a 6-year, $140 million contract to someone in free agency. Because, again, those guys usually don't hit free agency.
Right. But to your point, that was coming off 4 wins.
Right.
Now you're coming off 9.
Yeah.
And you're right there.
I mean, and there are just different ways. I think any assumption you may have about how the Colts are going to operate this offseason, just throw it out the window because we don't know. We have no idea.
Yeah.
Like, going back to the point I just made, this is the first time we've seen the Colts operate with a quarterback who they know who their week 1 starter is going to be in a really long time.
Yep. Good stuff right there. Anything else that we may have missed? Anything else, nugget or news bite-wise that we should hit on before we go here?
Just some of the stuff that Chris said about Anthony Richardson, and he sat where Casey was here during the bye week. He sat down with Lara Overton and I, and we chatted about some stuff, and I heard some of the same things that we talked about in that episode of the Official Colts podcast pop up here in his press conference. But the thing that, if I'm taking a one-line takeaway that he said, is he was like, the thing that sort of stood out about Anthony Richardson, he's a passer.
Yeah.
And there was all these, again, assumptions and narratives that this guy's a raw passer because he completed 50% of his passes at Florida. But
sure,
the Colts, when they drafted him, if you talk to people who were as part of that evaluation, they all would have said he is more accurate than his completion percentage would have told you.
Yeah.
But just the poise that he had in the pocket, I think that translated to the NFL in a really impressive way. And then the way that he operated from the pocket. Like, look, ultimately, you can be a mobile quarterback, but you have to win from the pocket. Eventually, it's gonna be 3rd and long, and you got to win from the pocket.
Yeah.
And I think we saw signs from Anthony
You have
Richardson.
to make 4 or 5 throws every game.
I think we saw signs from Anthony that he can do that.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of work to do. He's got a lot of consistency that needs to happen. But hearing Chris Ballard say that, and just you watch some of the throws that he made, like, that's really encouraging. That this guy who is so physically gifted is a quarterback with a capital Q.
There you go.
Play the position.
Capital Q. I'll take a Q. Give me a Q. Oh, no help there. Help there.
No one's getting a Q. If you're asking for a Q on what Wheel of Fortune,
yeah, you
already know the answer.
You know the puzzle, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's because you just
Pay
rolled
that man
the
his money.
600 or whatever. That's what it is. I want
All
that
right,
money.
yeah, Wheel of Fortune
right.
game theory. Let's go here.
That's how you know it's time to close it out. We're getting squirrely here. It's going to be a long but a very exciting offseason for the Indianapolis Colts, and it just started. Again, check out Anthony Richardson and Chris Ballard's press conference in full, Colts.com and the Colts Audio Network. And that'll do it for Overtime. We are here when news breaks or when stuff needs to be talked about. We get together and we hash it out. We will be back next Tuesday for the Official Colts podcast, brought to you by Wynn Las Vegas. And then, of course, on Fridays, as we said, the offseason home of the Colts radio-wise, that's the last word. And we will do that all offseason long and overtime when necessary. Again, for Casey Vallier, JJ Stankevitz, I'm Matt Taylor. Sherry, thank you on the 1s and 2s behind the camera on YouTube. Thanks for checking us out, and we will talk to you soon on Overtime here on the Colts Audio Network. So long.